Members of Parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, all following this meeting via social media, members of the media, persons in the public tribune, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I welcome you to this public meeting for today, Monday, December the 15th, which is a question hour. This is public meeting number 9. At this time, I want to give a special welcome to the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Dr. Luc Mercelina, the Honorable Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport and Telecommunication, Mrs. Grisha Heiliger-Martin, and their respective support staff. We have established a quorum of 10 members. I invite you to stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received notice of absence from the member Lewis. At this time, members of Parliament, are there any notifications from the floor? That appears not to be the case, so we can continue with the agenda point for this public meeting. As I mentioned earlier, this is a question hour, and we have as agenda points for this question hour, we have questions from MP F.A. Lacroes, directed to the Minister of General Affairs regarding Sint Maarten's national strategy for fuel diversification, LNG transition, public utilities, and the implementation of community benefits. This request by the Member of Parliament is registered on the IS 368, dated November the 19th of this year. We have a second agenda point for this question hour, namely, questions from MP E.J. Doran, directed to the Minister of TEATT regarding the reconstruction of the Philipsburg Marketplace and support to displaced vendors. And this request is registered on the IS 395. And that one is dated November the 26th. Going over to the agenda point, I think it's important that we just run down briefly the stipulations regarding a question hour, so-called vragenuurtje. And of course, the intention behind it is to create the possibility to interact with ministers and to do so as quickly as we can following the questions or the request for questions. And this particular item in our rules of order was introduced after the passing of Hurricane Irma to get quick questions into the ministers and quick responses from the ministers. During the vragenuurtje, of course, it's only expected that answers will be given on the topics as requested by the respective members of Parliament. So, briefly running down the procedure, these questions are to be answered during a question hour. So the questions that are posed by members of Parliament, to which it is explicitly added that these be added by the ministers in person. So in other words, orally. And in submitting these requests, they need to be in before Wednesday at 5 p.m. to then be handled or requested that a meeting take place during the following week. The article that concerns this matter is Article 69 and further of the Rules of Order. Seeing the fact that in theory all 15 members can submit questions for the question hour, a selection needs to be made of which questions of which member will be allowed for a particular question hour. And I say this to emphasize that although the time taken for this particular meeting on the convocation would seem as if 2 hours are allotted for this question hour, it is not that an hour is allotted per topic. The period of from 1 to 3 was mentioned just to allow us to have the time. Of course, if we go over the 1 hour, we will try to finish the particular topic at hand, but it can be so that we do not get through with all of the answers, especially like in this case, when you have more than one topic to be answered. In fact, for this particular meeting, we had like 4 requests for a question hour. And 2 were selected to still maintain the concept of a question hour. And we have, as I indicated, from which members we will be dealing with the questions and receiving the answers from the ministers. As is known, the ministers have already received these questions and have had the opportunity to prepare for the answers to the members of Parliament. And then once this is agreed to, like we have today, then the Member of Parliament now in the meeting will get the opportunity to read the questions as submitted for a maximum of 2 minutes. So not per question to be read, no. The questions can be posed by the Member of Parliament during 2 minutes, no longer than 2 minutes. The minister then has the possibility to respond within 1 minute per question. So the ministers have the opportunity to respond, and that is based on 1 minute per question. The member then have the opportunity to ask some additional questions, again, for a maximum of 2 minutes. The minister then again has the possibility to answer those particular questions for a maximum of 1 minute per question. And then, if possible, so to the discretion of the chairperson of Parliament, other members have the opportunity for a maximum of 1 minute to ask questions, however, about the same topic. And again, the ministers will be given a minute to answer. Naturally, during the special format of a question hour, no permission can be asked to hold an interpellation of ministers, nor can motions be submitted. Just having run down the criteria and regulations regarding a question hour of Parliament, we can now go over to the agenda points like I mentioned. And we have MP Lacroes, whose request is registered or was registered on the 19th of November, and in accordance with the Rules of Order 69D, paragraph 3, the member I invite now, MP Lacroes, to read the questions on the subject to the minister and the opportunity to provide a brief explanation. MP Lacroes, you have the floor.
A blessed morning, Madam Chair, Lady Griffier, my fellow colleagues, ministers and their support staff. Madam Chair, Lady, the question hour came about based on our motion that passed in Parliament concerning LNG and what the government has actually done until now, because in the motion we should have received some type of feedback by the 15th of October, which did not happen, and prompt these questions forth and seeking clarification from the Prime Minister to find out what actually has been done, what and where are we going with the harbor, GEBE, and the national plan from the government itself. Madam Chair Lady, I will not go over all the questions because it makes no sense. The Minister himself will have to read them over. So looking forward to the answers from the Prime Minister on these questions. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP Lacroes. All members of Parliament have access to the questions that have been asked by, in this case, MP Lacroes, and the Prime Minister will use his discretion to respond, because the Prime Minister has 1 minute for every question. So I don't know in how far in this case MP Lacroes had 15 questions, and they actually amounted to 20 in total because some of them had like a extra. So Prime Minister, to you, your discretion, because you have 1 minute per question, so you have a total of 15/20 minutes to respond. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity, and members of Parliament also, thank you for the invitation, and the people of Sint Maarten, good morning. Good afternoon. Coming to giving answer to the first question, the government has asked both companies for their views on fuel diversification to inform the government's decision-making on this matter. From the side of the Port of Sint Maarten Group, the Port of Sint Maarten Group informed the government that it functions primarily as a facilitator and service provider to cruise and cargo vessels. Fueling services in the port are executed by third-party companies such as Nestor and Sol. Any diversification in fuel usage will depend on the demands from carriers and will be facilitated by the applicable service providers in consultation with the Port Sint Maarten Group. Nonetheless, the Port Sint Maarten Group is actively engaged in discussions with cruise lines and third-party stakeholders, taking into account environmental, social, and governance priorities, as well as the cruise industry's commitments to achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. From the Port Sint Maarten Group perspective, diversification efforts include, but are not limited to, electrification of the port operations, expansion of solar and wind energy, implementation of waste-to-energy initiatives, collaboration on future alternative bunkering options, transition from HFO to MFO, LNG, and other emerging fuels. From the side of NVGB, NVGB referred to the Least Cost Power Development Plan, the LCPDP, prepared by Energy Nautics, contains relevant analysis on fuel options for power generation. The study highlights that diesel generation operating on heavy fuel provide cost advantage and reduce consumption compared to the LFO. While the current diesel generators are technically capable of operating on natural gas, a transition to LNG was not evaluated as viable due to the significant capital investment required, particularly for infrastructure and LNG regasification facilities. A separate comprehensive feasibility study would be required to properly assess LNG as an option. The study also found that small-scale LNG would be less efficient and more costly under existing assumptions. Question 2, what concrete step has the government taken to ensure that LNG and other alternative energy sources are integrated into Sint Maarten's long-term energy strategy? The answer is the government is taking steps to ensure that NVGB complies with the electricity concession, which has been issued for a period of 25 years since July 16, 2010. The concession agreement outlines several obligations and required actions. Currently, the majority of these actions are not yet being implemented, such as multi-annual plan on operations and investments, targets for renewables, and publication of quality measurements. As a step towards the required multi-annual plan, government has requested a high-level overview of long-term maintenance with the impact on security of supply through a formal letter dated June 17, 2025. To meet the renewable targets in the concession, NVGB has requested access to government land to realize their first solar project, which is under review by the Ministry of Romy. In reviewing any proposals from NVGB or third parties on alternative energy sources, the government will be guided by expert advice. The Trust Fund financed a study as presented by Energy Nautics to the Council of Ministers in December 2024 highlighted that the transition to LNG was not considered due to the substantial additional capital costs involved. These costs encompass investment in LNG storage tanks, port upgrades, transportation infrastructure, and LNG regasification plants. The volatile nature of natural gas and LNG export prices from the U.S. introduces significant uncertainty into cost projections, making it challenging to gauge the economic viability of LNG. In contrast, renewables, especially solar panels, emerge from the Trust Fund finance study as a more attractive and predictable long-term investment option than LNG, offering lower levelized cost of electricity. Question 3, has the fuel and transport process proposal regarding new income-generating and cost-cutting measures for harbor operations and the GEB power plant been tendered, and what were the findings? The answer is no such tender has been put out as the focus of government on grid stabilization and consistent provision of electricity. That has been actually the focus of government in the past period. What is the next question? Question 4, what progress has been made towards adopting a policy that allows cruise ships docking in the harbor to use local fuel and electrical power? The answer is, after last year's energy crisis, the focus of government is to secure a stable electricity supply for the people and business of Sint Maarten. A significant investment is being made to procure new generating capacity. The additional capacity that is being procured with the capital loan from the Netherlands should suffice to ensure that the people and business of Sint Maarten have access to a stable electricity supply in the next 5 to 10 years, with additional investment by GEBE and consumers in solar panel. An expansion of that capacity to allow one or multiple small, medium, or large cruise ships to use local generation capacity can only be considered after the electricity supply for our people and business is secured. Question 5. Is a feasibility study being initiated or completed regarding LNG to ships that have already transitioned to LNG usage? If yes, what are the initial results? The answer is no such a feasibility study has yet been initiated. Question 6. Did the board of GEBE meet the October 15, 2025 deadline for exploring technical and financial feasibility of transitioning from heavy fuel to LNG for local power generations? The shareholder has imposed a deadline for NV-GEB to explore the feasibility of transitioning from heavy fuels to LNG for local power generation. The current focus of the shareholder and NV-GEB is to stabilize the electricity supply to the people and businesses of Sint Maarten, while the Energynautics Least Cost Power Development Plan found that small-scale LNG, the SSLNG, would be less efficient and more costly under existing assumptions. NV-GEB may at a later time explore the technical and financial feasibility of a transition to LNG further. The shareholder will, at this time, not impose a specific requirement or deadline to NV-GEB to analyze the feasibility of LNG. Priority will be given to actions that are needed to stabilize the electricity supply to our people and businesses. Question 7. What findings and recommendations were provided to Parliament regarding LNG conversion, and what actions have been taken on those recommendations? The answer is, I have previously referred to the Least Cost Power Development Plan, the LCPDP, prepared by Energynautics, which contains relevant analysis on fuel option for power generation. While the current diesel generators are technically capable of operating on natural gas, a transition to NLG was not evaluated as viable due to the significant capital investment required, particularly for infrastructure and NLG regasification facilities. Question 8. Has the government approved the establishment of the joint venture between the Harbour Group, GEBE, and the government for NLG procurement, storage, and distribution? The answer is no. The government is not considering the establishment of such a joint venture at this particular time. A decision of that magnitude requires a more comprehensive and compelling analysis. Based on the current findings, particularly the LNG-related results presented in the Energynautics report, there are no sufficiently convincing arguments to justify pursuing this venture at this stage, as it would be less efficient and more costly under the existing assumptions. Question 9. What safeguards are being put in place to ensure that the cost per kilowatt hour under the new fuel regime does not exceed the prevailing ceiling throughout the Caribbean region? The answer to question 9 is NV-GEB has undertaken a comprehensive tariff study to ensure tariffs remain competitive and affordable. The NV-GEBE tariff study analysis recommends safeguards, including cost-reflective tariff design, benchmarking against Curaçao, Aruba, Saba, and St. Eustatius, a monthly fuel class adjustment to track fuel market changes, and progressive block tariffs to protect low-income households and promote fairness. Government is also in the process of mandating BTP to regulate the electricity tariffs to ensure that these are cost-based. There we will look at the local cost, but both fixed cost and the variables cost will all be evaluated. Question number 10, has the concessionaire agreed to the required contributions for public street lighting and solar rechargeable equipment at key sporting facilities? And if so, what is the implementation timeline? Question 11 also, I add to it, and I will give answer to all three questions. Question 11 is what support has been secured for strengthening independent operation and resilience at the Roll Sport Complex, Jose Lake, John Cooper, Link Sport Fields, and Philipsburg Sports Auditorium. And the other question is, have any generators or supplemental equipment been donated or allocated to these facilities as instructed in the motion? The answer to question 10, 11, and 12 are the following. The status of discussions and implementation regarding contribution, concessions, and equipment for the sporting facilities is as follows. Prior to the passing of Mr. Washington, the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sport, Mrs. Melissa Gums, was in conversation with Mr. Washington regarding potential concessions and projects related to the schools and sporting facilities. However, since his passing, no further discussion have been taken place between the Ministry and NVGB regarding support measure, reduced rates for sporting facilities, or the agreement required to advance the matters referenced in these questions. Question 13, can the government provide Parliament with a regular progress report required under the motion, including reasonable outcome timelines and milestones? The answer on question 13 is the current focus of government is on grid stabilization and consistent provision of electricity. Therefore, no progress report as required under the motion have been compiled to date. Question 14, what are the next steps and phase plans for regional leadership, transitional implementation, and community benefit associated with the nation's shift towards LNG and broader energy sector reform? The answer to question 14 is the following. Once again, the current focus of government is on grid stabilization and consistent provision of electricity. Therefore, no progress report as required under the motion has been compiled to date. Question 15, what is the government's vision and policy framework to ensure that these energy reforms are implemented equitable and sustainable for the benefit of all residents? The answer to this question 15 is the vision is to bring stability and sustainability and affordable to the energy supply in Sint Maarten. Part of the effort to support sustainability will include investment in the renewable alternative energy sources. Madam Chair, these have been the answers to the 15 questions posed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister Luc Mercelina. And as I mentioned during the introduction of this meeting, the member requesting the question hour or requesting these topics for the question hour now have the opportunity again to ask additional questions, and the total amount of time is 2 minutes. MP Lacroes. MP Lacroes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Madam Chair Lady, I wouldn't even say disappointed. I'll actually use the term that I think it's not important to this government. But we'll continue moving forward. And I have one question, Madam Chair Lady, just one for the Prime Minister. I've heard the mention of solar numerous times. If the Prime Minister is aware how much square meters of solar panels we need for 1 megawatt, just one. And then if the Prime Minister could tell me where we'll get that land from, moving forward. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP Lacroes. Prime Minister, you now have the opportunity to respond to this question. And of course, you have a minute. The Member of Parliament only had one question, so you have a 1 minute possibility to answer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. These two questions are technical questions, asking the amount of square surface in meters, I assume, to generate 1 megawatt. And the other one is the status update on the land. Both I will have to check, especially with the technical part of GB. And for the land, I will discuss it with Fromi and come back to you with these answers because I don't have them with me now. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and that will be noted. Members of Parliament, you now have the opportunity, if you have any questions for the Minister on this topic, and especially relating to the answers that the Prime Minister has already provided, and you have 1 minute to ask, 1 minute time to ask your questions. And just as a reminder, the topic that the Member of Parliament has asked about for this question hour is regarding Sint Maarten's national strategy for fuel diversification, LNG transition, public utilities, and the implementation of community benefits. Is there anyone wanting to ask a follow-up question to the Prime Minister? We do have a Member of Parliament. That member is MP Otley, to whom I give the floor at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good day to the Honourable Prime Minister, the Honourable Minister of TEATT, your support staff, the viewing and listening public. I'll be brief. Honourable Prime Minister, you mentioned BTP. I'm asking what legislative trajectory are you using to ensure BTP has oversight over GEBE? Also, Madam Chair, through you, to the Honourable Minister of TEATT, I saw an article once that stated you are looking into LNG for the harbour. What is the update of this? I stand to be corrected, but I look up the article. It says the Minister of TEATT will look into LNG. And the last but not least, is there any, what was the feedback from GEBE as it pertains to LNG? I understand that it states LNG is more costly than the fuel, but at the moment we are using more diesel, which is, the diesel is more expensive than the LNG. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Otley. Is there any other member requesting or having the need to ask a follow-up question? We are here to ask on this topic. We have the Prime Minister here to interact with on the topic. The Minister of TEATT is actually here for the next agenda point of this meeting. So to MP Otley in particular, I saw you ask a question to the Minister of TEATT, but actually the Minister of TEATT, while I see they're caucusing, which is a good thing, because then maybe the Minister of TEATT can give the answer to the Prime Minister. But Minister of TEATT, you don't have to respond in this section of the question hour, as we have the Prime Minister for this topic. We'll go over to the next topic once we're through. Members of Parliament, yes, we do have MP Lacroes. MP Lacroes, I'm going to allow you to... No, actually, you can't really have a comment because it is after you ask your additional questions, then the other members have the opportunity. But since I have on my pin, I'll allow you to, for Christmas, I'll allow, no, quickly, MP Lacroes.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. I am extremely happy that you are here today in this question hour, because we could ask questions in this one. Just a brief question, if the Prime Minister has, and the COM, have thought about the changing of the name of GEBE. GEBE stands for de gemeenschappelijke elektriciteitsbedrijf Bovenwindse Eilanden, en die bestaan niet meer, toch? So maybe something to think about. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP Lacroes. The Members of Parliament, is there any other member who have a question on the topic before I give the floor to the Prime Minister? That does not appear to be the case. Prime Minister, can you respond to?
MPs, thank you for the additional questions. The first one from MP Otley is about the status of the legislation for the entity BTP to be the regulator. At this particular moment, the draft law is draft landsverordening has been drafted, is finalized. It's now by JZNW, and in the meantime, we received already feedback from JZNW on the draft legislation for this new landsverordening. And we are now making some corrections and on the statements made by the JZNW. And once that is done, the draft legislation will come first to COM, and from COM we move further with the Raad van Advies and Parliament. But the draft legislation is already there. JZNW gave their feedback already. We are working on the feedback to actually adjust and tweak it. And after that, it will go to the COM, and from COM, it's going to move forward to the Raad van Advies and Parliament. That's question number one. A statement has been made about a vision of GEBE concerning LNG. At this particular moment, there is not a firm vision from GEBE towards LNG. Especially, they are quite impressed with the fact that it's relatively expensive, the logistics and infrastructure to handle this LNG. But if there is a concrete vision of GEBE concerning LNG, that is not the case at this particular moment. And there was a third question from the Member of Parliament, LNG legislation, and the question towards the Minister that made a statement about LNG. She just explained me that the statement that she made is not that we are going direction LNG, but that alternatives are being evaluated in the way moving forward with energy for Sint Maarten. That is a statement and the explanation that the Minister of TEATT just gave me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Prime Minister, for your part in this question hour, we have come to the end of your part, and I want to thank you for the... Oh, we do, wait, we have a couple of things happening. MP Lacroes, you now have the opportunity actually as the requestor for, if you had, no, he doesn't have that anymore. Oh, he had a last question. You had? Oh, the MP Lacroes' last question was regarding the name of GEBE.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Now we got it right.
Yeah, sorry, Madam Chair. MP Lacroes, the following. At this particular moment, we are going through so many serious problems in the community, especially with our energy supply for our country. Considering the challenges that we have in this country also to guarantee not only stability but sustainability of energy for the people of Sint Maarten. To be very honest with you, this is at this particular moment the last thing that I'm thinking on now is to what name I'm going to give GB. I will have that space the moment that I feel more comfortable with guaranteeing the society which I form part of, that there is more sustainability and actually stability of energy. But of course, it's an old-fashioned name that doesn't cover the GEB of nowadays. And of course, it's something for us to consider in the future. And you're right, it's a little outdated name, but that does not have my priority at this particular moment. Madam Chair, MP Lacroes also gave me, asked me 2 questions about that I said there were technical questions about how many square meters of solar panel we need to produce 1 megawatt. In the meantime, I got the answer, and it's 5,000 square meters of solar panel you need to actually generate 1 megawatt of energy. And the surface land that they are planning to occupy for the solar panels is until now coming from existing rooftops, parking lots, and about 1 to 2 hectares of land. That is what we are busy with. And more details about the land, I still have to give you an answer on that one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you to the members of Parliament. We have one more answer that we will receive from the Prime Minister, probably in writing, and that's the one the Prime Minister just indicated regarding the land. Further explanation, or yes, further explanation on that. So Prime Minister and support staff, thank you. Members of Parliament, thank you for your participation on this part. I will now adjourn just for a minute to allow the Prime Minister, if it was his intention to take leave. Prime Minister, you were, or you will remain here as we continue on the second part? Prime Minister?
Now, the second half of the meeting are questions directly to the Minister of TEATT, and we discussed this in advance already, and the Minister of TEATT has no problem to stand and answer the questions directed to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Then I will adjourn for a minute to allow you to take leave. This meeting is hereby adjourned for just a minute. Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, after a very brief adjournment during which the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs responded to questions by MP Lacroes as part of this public meeting, Question Hour of Parliament. For today, Monday, December the 15th, we also have questions that were submitted by MP Doran, and these are registered on the IS 395 and, as I mentioned, dated November the 26th. These questions were directed to the Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport and Telecommunication, and they were submitted in accordance with Article 69 and further of the Rules of Order. The Minister of TEATT, Mrs. Grisha Heiliger-Martin, was invited to be at this question hour, and of course we have the Minister here with us this afternoon. Thank you for being here, Minister, and I immediately give the floor to the requester of this topic for the question hour for today, and that is MP Doran, to whom I give the floor. MP Doran, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to the Minister, support staff, my colleagues, and everyone tuned in. Madam Chair, I requested this question hour because the marketplace affects real people and because the Parliament already took a clear decision during the budget debate in terms of a motion that I brought earlier this year. The intention behind that motion was simple. While the marketplace is being built, vendors should not be left to carry the burden alone, especially since the temporary location that they were moved to does not allow them to earn anywhere near what they earned before. In September, I followed up with the execution of the motion. Specifically, the motion called for vendor relief in the form of a stipend. Taking the minimum wage into consideration, in the response of the minister indicated that the stipend was not implemented, but an alternative form of relief was being developed in close collaboration with the Ministry of Finance. In that same response, the minister also indicated that the Parliament could expect a meeting in November to receive an update on the construction and related matters. Since that meeting never took place, Madam Chair, I felt compelled, and I also found it necessary to formally request a question hour. This meeting is therefore about clarity. It's about understanding what relief is actually being applied and how it works in practice, and also truly get effective results in terms of relief for the vendors, Madam Chair. I'll go through a brief timeline. August 2024, 14th, the minister had a groundbreaking and indicated that next week the work would start. In January 27, 2025, the construction would start this week. June 20th, 2025, the construction will start soon. August 18th, 2025, in 6 to 8 months, this will be completed. November 5th, the project remains firmly on track. Madam Chair, a couple months ago, I started an excavator moving dirt from the back to the front to the back, and that has been about 4 months since then. Therefore, Madam Chair, I believe I'm begging the minister, by extension the government, to work on some sort of stipend and relief because these people did not ask to be in the position that they're in. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, MP Doran. Minister Grisha Heiliger-Martin, like I mentioned at the start of this meeting, you have the opportunity to, of course, provide answers, and it is a minute per question, so per answer to the question, rather. And we have counted the questions by MP Doran. There are approximately 20 as well, taking all of the questions into consideration. So to your discretion, Minister, in terms of how much of the questions you repeat in order to give your answers. Minister, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Lady. Good afternoon to the Secretary General, and good afternoon to the members of Parliament and those listening to the through via radio, online, and those in the Tribune. First question, first of the 15 questions. You recently stated publicly that the Marketplace project is firmly on track, and on track with which timeline and which specific milestone are currently being met. When I stated that the Marketplace project is firmly on track, I was referring to the procedural path. The milestones currently are as follows: completion and approval of the final design in consultation with the co-financier, presentation of that design to the vendors with positive feedback, and receipt of the contractor's finalization of the bill of quantities. So when I stated that the project is on track, I meant that it is advancing step by step along the procedural path with design approval secured, vendor engagement completed, and financial review now underway. In your written response to Parliament, you noted that a firm completion date cannot be provided at this time. How does the ministry reconcile this with your statement during the November 5th Council of Ministers press briefing that the project is firmly on track? When I stated that during the November 5th press briefing that the Marketplace project is firmly on track, I referred to the fact that the project is advancing in the procedural steps under the FIDIC Yellow Book framework. Several of those steps were referred to in my previous answer, and at the time in my written response to Parliament, I noted that a firm completion date cannot be yet provided. This is because a timeline for construction depends on the outcome of various other administrative procedural steps that form part of the overall project. Therefore, the statement the project is firmly on was merely based on terms of process and milestones. What has the preparatory construction phase, including filling, leveling, and compaction when was it officially completed? The preparatory construction phase, including filling, leveling, and compaction, was officially completed at the end of August 2025. As mentioned during one of my previous meetings in Parliament, the additional requirements of the soil investigation and stabilization measures extended the preparatory stage, and the Department of New Works within the Ministry of VRAMI instructed the contractor to do said works. On what specific date is the foundation phase scheduled to begin? At this time, a specific date of the foundation phase has not yet been set. The contractor has indicated, however, that once the revised bill of quantities is reviewed and accepted, the project can start in January 2026 based on the proposed schedule, and foundation works works would begin immediately following the contract amendment and mobilization. Question 5, what construction milestone have been established by the project management team, including foundation, superstructure, roofing, utilities, and finishing? Please present this information in a timeline. The contractor has provided a work schedule that sets out the major construction milestones. These include foundation phase, superstructure, roofing, utilities, fishing, etc. The contractor has also indicated that the full construction cycle is expected to take approximately 216 days, which is just over 7 months once the project restarts. The complete written schedule will be shared with Parliament in Q1 of 2026 so that members can review the timeline in full, and I will return to present this in person thereafter. The ministry referenced an independent project firm reviewing the contract's submission. Can the ministry clarify the scope of work reporting structure assigned to this firm and indicate whether the identity of the firm and any related documentation can be provided confidentially to Parliament, to the members of Parliament? The independent project management firm engaged for the Marketplace reconstruction project is Angelique Properties BV, with the full acknowledgement of the Ministry of VRAMI. The firm's scope of services includes contract administration, including the review and approval of drawings prior to submissions to VRAMI, assessment of material submittals and variation, interim payment certificates, technical and quality oversight through weekly site inspections, commissioning and handover, health, safety, and environmental monitoring in accordance with the FIDIC Yellow Book, and a review of the bill of quantities, including advice on cost implications. Angelique Property BV reports directly to the Ministry of TEATT, and the documentation that can be provided to Parliament on a confidential basis is the assignment letter, which I think I already submitted to members of Parliament, through you, Madam Chair Lady. Question 7, the ministry confirmed the existence of a verified list of displaced vendors. How many vendors are there on the verified list, and what eligible criteria were applied? On the list, we have a total of 54 vendors, and they have been categorized in 3 areas. Area 1, which is Old Fire Station between Back Street and Canagita Street. Area 2, behind the courthouse between the Front Street and Back Street, and Area 3, the Great Bay area, more so along the boardwalk. We cross-referenced this list internally with the Department of IETA, IETA, Economic Licenses and Receivers Office, and before and again after the vendors were displaced. The total amount that are displaced right now are 33. So with reference to the criteria, one of the criteria that applied that the vendors must have is a license to operate in Area 1, Old Fire Station, which is between Back Street to Street, which is clearly stated on their respective licenses. And that, again, like I stated before, is a total of 33. Question 8. The ministry indicated that vendors' fees will be waived during the reconstruction period. Can the minister confirm whether these fee waivers have already commenced? And if not, when will they begin? Yes, the fee waiver process has already commenced. Question 9, does the ministry intend to apply the fee waiver retroactively? Specifically, will vendors be refunded to credited for fees already paid during the period they were displaced, or will the waiver apply only moving forward? Yes, the fee waivers will be applied retroactively. Upon research with the receiver's office, we can confirm, however, that the vendors that have been displaced did not pay their fees during the time or date. So what is the average monthly vendor fee, and what is the total value of fees now being granted to displaced vendors? The annual fee is 1,200 guilders. Typically, vendors would make a monthly payment of 100 guilders, which is equal to 1,200 guilders, and by the end of the year. Question 11, based on the anticipated construction duration, what is the total projected value of the financial relief associated with the fee waivers? So the total projected value of the financial relief is approximately 18,800 guilders. So that's 33 vendors multiplied by the 1,200 guilders multiplied by 3 years. In your written response, you indicated that the Ministry of TEATT, in close consultation with the Ministry of Finance, is exploring additional options for relief for the displaced vendors. Can the minister provide an update on what options have been explored since then and the results of these discussions? At this point in time, we cannot disclose the additional relief options as still being explored. In addition, we did inform the vendors that said additional relief options would be mentioned to them first, and therefore once we provide them with this update and receive their feedback, only then can we share this with the members of Parliament. Question 13. Based on your press briefing on November 5th, 2025, a meeting with the vendors took place on October 27th. What was the feedback received from the vendors during the meeting, and what concerns or recommendations were presented to the ministry? The ministry met with the marketplace vendors to present the final design of the new facility and discuss the relief process and provide a project update. The feedback received was generally positive. Vendors expressed appreciation for the improvement in the design of the ventilation and the additional restrooms, which they felt would enhance both their working environment and the visitor experience. The main concerns raised related to the practical matters, ensuring that the booths remain simple to operate and that the construction timeline is communicated clearly so that they can plan their businesses accordingly. The ministry also reaffirmed its commitment to continue to keep the vendors informed throughout the process. Overall, the meeting confirmed vendor support for the revised design. Question 14, has the ministry conducted any form of quick scan, rapid assessment, or preliminary estimate of the revenue losses vendors have experienced since being displaced? If so, can we get an overview? No, the ministry has not done a quick scan, but what we did do, we have one-on-one discussions with the vendors on their challenges and realities they face. And they have mentioned and pointed out that some of the visitors who wish to purchase would like to do so by card, not cash. Special request was made for assistance with acquiring a POS, a point of sale machine. And we are currently in discussion with the bank to assist the vendors with this so that their chances of sales can increase during 2025-2026. They also expressed the need for more direct traffic to their area to ensure that they aren't forgotten and that the people will have ample time to buy a few things if they wish to do so. And in addition, we informed the vendors that the need for more direct traffic to that area would come via the means of a PPP, which is a private-public partnership, the Stop and Shop program. Due to the lack of funds to get the project started this year, we could not proceed. However, TEATT and VRAMI are currently busy discussing this once more, and we'll share more details after the holiday season. Final question, what exactly changed between August 2025 when you announced completion and what happened in the 6 to 8 months now? Please explain the shift in the goalposts. Through you, Madam Chair Lady, when I announced in August that the completion was expected within 6 to 8 months, that projection was based on the design and cost framework available at the time. Since then, adjustments were made to the roof design to incorporate a polycarbonate structure that improves natural light and comfort within the marketplace. The contractor required additional time to obtain the finalized quotation from the manufacturers for this specialized roof system, and that process took longer than anticipated. These adjustments were made in consultation with our partners to ensure that the market meets international standards, provides both vendors and visitors with a high quality of life experience. And then this refinement of the design has strengthened the projects by aligning it with the expectation of cruise visitors who represented the majority of the shoppers, so improving daily working conditions for vendors. The shift in timeline was a result of the time needed to secure accurate pricing and ensure that the design meets these enhanced standards. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. I hope I met the deadline for the questions.
Thank you, Minister Heiliger Martin. The MP Doran, as requester for this part of the question hour, you have the opportunity for a maximum of 2 minutes to ask any related additional questions. MP Doran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Madam Chair, to the Honorable Minister. Minister, you mentioned that there was a meeting on October 27th with the vendors and that they saw the new design and agreed with the new design. So again, I can assume then that all the discussions about the permit being approved or the start and the commencement or even the activity of the excavator a couple of months ago was all in vain, because if no design is officially approved, what are they busy with exactly? Secondly, through you, Madam Chair, there's a constant talk about the project being firmly on track. But how can it be firmly on track if things that are planned are not being executed? Can I get some clarity on that point? Lastly, there was a point where the minister mentioned that the bill of quantities is currently being reviewed by the contractor to see if the contractor agreed. Madam Chair, for the umpteenth time, I want to make this very clear. A bid already took place years ago. A company won the bid. If you change the price, if you change the design, if you change anything, it could be a screw, that it costs a guilder more or a guilder less. There is need for a new tender. Will the minister proceed without putting this back on tender and basically disadvantage every other contractor that will be interested in participating in this project? The Minister of VRAMI sat here almost a year ago and mentioned anytime the bill of quantities change, it needs to go on tender again. So through you, Madam Chair, those are my points, and I look forward to clarity on that. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, MP Doran. Minister, you have the opportunity, if you can now, to respond to the questions by MP Doran. Members, we're just awaiting the minister to collect some of the information regarding the questions. Minister, I give you the floor.
Okay, so based on the questions posed by MP Doran through you, Madam Chair Lady, the contract was already awarded under the FIDIC Yellow Book as design and build project. Within that framework, variations to the designs are permitted. And I think I've stated this many, many times in the floor of Parliament. So the changes was therefore handled as contractual variations, not as new tender. And then the major consuming delay has been the contractor's process of securing the quotation from manufacturers for the specialized roofing system that forms part of the revised design. Obtaining price for the structure proved more challenging than expected, but it was a necessary step to ensure that the marketplace meets the required standards for durability and user and visual comfort. So the quotation was now been reviewed and included in the overall bill of quantities, which is now currently under review.
Thank you, Minister Grisha Heiliger Martin, for those additional answers to MP Doran's questions. At this time, of course, members of Parliament, all of you here, you have the opportunity, if need be, to ask the minister any other questions regarding this particular matter, which I remind you is the reconstruction of the Philipsburg Marketplace and support to displaced vendors. Does any member have the floor? I see MP York does, to whom I give the floor at this time. MP York.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to you, honorable colleagues, the minister and her support staff, and the viewing public. Madam Chair, I'll just keep it brief, seeing that I have 1 minute. Just 2 questions. Minister, can you, via you, Madam Chair, can the minister share with us how much % from 0 to 100 has already been paid to the contractor for said project? And also, if I understood the minister, via you, Madam Chair, alluded to a timeline that was given, but she meant, the minister meant more process-wise and not construction-wise. I'm confused because here I have a article from the August 19th where the minister states Philipsburg Marketplace to be completed in 6 to 8 months. Madam Chair, that was 4 months ago. So can the minister explain if that timeline is still on schedule, or is it firmly on track, or do we have any more delays that we don't know about this yet? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP York. I see MP E.J. is also requesting the floor. MP E.J., you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Based on the minister's answers, I have the official FIDIC Yellow Book rules here, and it specifically mentions that non-material changes cannot be made, right? So, and the Minister of Brahmi also said the same. So I really want clarity on the FIDIC rule book, the Yellow Book, and the Minister's decisions. It says clearly non-material changes, so minor technical adjustments, small quantities, but they have to be predefined, the margin also of that, but the government hasn't provided, or any administrative errors. This is not the case in this particular case. And it says specifically because you want to keep things fair and equal for all bidders, you want transparency and fair competition, which we are stressing on all the time. So again, can the minister please clearly define in this process, because once you change the bill of quantities, that means you are changing the material orders. It cannot have both. Thank you.
Thank you, MP E.J., for those additional questions. Minister, can you go into the answers to the questions posed by the other members of Parliament? I'll allow you a few minutes and then to collect the information in order to provide it. Minister, you
Yes,
ready?
thank
Okay.
you.
Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. So was a deposit made, the question posed by MP York? Yes, a deposit of 467,000 guilders approximately was paid to the contractor. Part of the amount was used for contractual works, and a significant portion went into additional works requested by VROMI. And just over 200,000 guilders remains as credit with the contractor towards the continuation of construction, largely already committed to the suppliers and for materials. And then the question, when I announced in August that the completion was expected within 6 to 8 months, that projection was based on the design and the cost framework available at the time. So since then, adjustments were made to the roof design to incorporate a polycarbonate structure, and that improves the natural lighting and comfort within the marketplace. And the contractor was required, the contractor then required additional time to obtain the finalization quotation from the manufacturer for the specialized roof system. And that process took longer than anticipated. That was exactly the holdup. And regarding the question from, and then the question regarding the question from MP Atwell Arian is mainly, he's highlighting, through you, Madam Chair, the MP is highlighting specifics in the FIDIC book. I'll have to bring that one in writing to explain why the FIDIC Yellow Book does not prohibit material changes. It actually explicitly allows the variations to work to the works or the employee's requirements. That's the max I can say for now, but I'll give a better answer to that to the minister, to the MP in writing regarding that.
Thank you, Minister Heiliger Martin, for the answers to those additional questions as well. Thank you, members of Parliament who have interacted on this topic with the minister. At this time, I want to thank the Honorable Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport and Telecommunication, Mrs. Grisha Heiliger Martin, and her respective support staff for their participation here today. Ladies and gentlemen, members of Parliament, we have come to the end of this question hour and the public meeting of Parliament. I thank you all for your participation, and I hereby close this public meeting, namely a question hour of Parliament. Meeting closed.